Hello and welcome everybody to this week's session in Z-Axis TV, where we are conducting a series of conversations with women of significance in STEM. And today we have with us Brittany Hoffmann Eubanks, who is a pharmacist by background, and today is a medical communications consultant with her own business that she's founded, Banner Medical LLC, and is focused on medical writing. So today we're going to explore Brittany's career story and some of her secrets for success, how she is working with her STEM education and training and translating that in the world to create a life and a business that's meeting her personal and professional needs. So welcome, Brittany.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to hearing, a little bit about your journey of how you have, firstly, how you found your way or decided to pursue pharmacy as an education and career, and then how you have come to be doing what you're doing. So could we start with that?
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to share a little bit about my background. So I feel like I always kind of was destined for a career in medicine, whether, it ended up being pharmacist as what I'm doing now. I was that little girl that, the Fisher-Price doctor bag was my favorite toy. And so my mom used to just joke with me because I would always carry it around trying to play doctor on anyone and everyone that I could. So it just kind of naturally, I think, fit for my background of just having that nurturing, caring, capacity and wanting to help others around me. So I, ended up in pharmacy as a, pharmacist, and have practiced in what we call community pharmacy here in the United States for the last 8 years, after doing some additional training, what we call a residency, where you do some additional work after graduation, a postgraduate year, which is really intensive, gives you 4 to 5 years of experience of being a pharmacist, just all jam-packed in that 1 year, which was really great for me to just feel confident, be able to go out into community practice and take care of my patients. And I'm fortunate enough to work for an innovative company that really lets pharmacists practice at the top of their scope of practice. So I get to see patients, help them with their diabetes management, hyperlipidemia or lipids, for example, as well as help with immunization. So that public health initiative as well within the pharmacy, even travel vaccines, which is exciting to hear about all the places that, patients are going, and help them stay protected before they go and do their international travel. So it's been an exciting opportunity. And as what happens with a lot of entrepreneurs, my endeavor in my medical communications company and as a medical writer actually happened by accident. It wasn't something
Before we go there, Brittany, I'm curious just to ask you, were you wanting to do medicine originally, or how did you come to choose pharmacy over becoming a doctor?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually did want to be a physician first. In high school, we actually had a program where you could go at the junior college in the area and become a certified nurse's assistant. And so I actually did that all through my undergrad years in college, which is the first 4 years here in the United States. And, just started exploring different opportunities and volunteered a lot to see what it would be like. And ultimately ended up getting a position as a pharmacy technician here, and fell in love with pharmacy. And from that point on, I just never looked back and decided that, pharmacy was it for me. I loved learning about the different medications, the way that you can improve outcomes just through the various, measures that we have with therapeutics. So really just fell in love with it from my time as a pharmacy technician.
And that's a great example too of having a general education in those first few years. I mean, who at 18 really knows exactly what they're going to do? So, go into an environment where you can actually have practical experience in numerous health related environments. And here you are, you make a better choice. And
Oh,
as you
absolutely.
mature, yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
That's
I actually would just say that it's so important too, especially at least here in the United States, college is fairly expensive. And so at 18 years old, it can be really difficult to decide what you want to do and then have tons of, debt on top of it. So I think there's a great opportunity in that, just to explore, to be open, try something out if you're able to, or at least in shadows, various individuals that are in a field that you think you're interested in, to help out with that process. Because you can decide very early on. I love animals actually, and I thought I used to want to be a veterinarian, and went and worked in an animal hospital for a short period of time, and my allergies were just so bad that I was like, okay, my animal obsession is going to be on my own. There's no way, that I'll be able to exist there. So huge value in that,
and that
definitely.
would have been a very expensive mistake to not realize that, being 4 or 5 years into a vet degree, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, so tell us now about the pivot point from community pharmacy into medical writing and entrepreneurship, because it's quite a shift.
Yeah, it is a big shift, just going from, pharmacy background to, writing on a daily basis in the role that, I do now. It does actually, believe it or not, fit. It seems like it wouldn't, but it does. As pharmacists, we are trained just in all things, even beyond just the therapeutics component of it. So we have to understand the normal physiology, the pathophysiology, so all of that, in order to be able to make recommendations for patients in terms of medications that are going to help them with whatever their diagnosis is. So I think it actually lends to us being able to really hone in on the communication of that drug therapy, and how it's appropriate for one, patient compared to another, and just really help educate healthcare providers and patients on what's going to, potentially be an option for them. And so I think I just was able to leverage my background in pharmacy to be able to take my writing skills that I learned and have perfected over the years through having a grandmother who was a librarian and taught me how to read and write at an early age, and just meld those together to be able to create something unique in a way among pharmacists, that non-traditional role, and just kind of run with it and share that information.
Wow. And so in terms of then that transition of, again, going from a paid, a PAYE or a paid role, working for someone else, to then being self-generating, tell us a bit about that journey.
Yeah, so I still actually work full time in community practice. So I feel like my entrepreneurial endeavors have been a bit different compared to the traditional way. So I've been building my business while still working full time, which I know is a bit unusual. But to that end, I think I started out real small. My, business unofficially began as a way to make some extra money on the side to pay off student loans and travel. I love traveling across the world and visiting new and exciting places. And what happened was I found out that what I was doing actually solved a big problem that was out in the world, the need for good communication, to be able to share information in a way that's understandable and digestible, and helps healthcare providers actually act on changes within their practice setting. The same thing for patients. There's so much information out there that it's a lot of it's just not even worth, the read. So that transition, to your point, really came from a process over 5 years of just deciding that, I was going to bet on myself and really just to make, Banner Medical what it is today, and work really hard to go from my role as a pharmacist to one as a medical communications owner. So it really was kind of an evolution, so to speak, from medical writer to now, running a company that hires pharmacists to create this content, and kind of that total mind shift from, individual medical writer to business owner, and what's required for that.
Well, what I'm hearing, Brittany, is a very strategic process, and a very deliberate and I guess a very mature way to approach entrepreneurship, because there are so many excited people or frustrated people that want to jump out of corporate because they can't stand that anymore. And so they jump into entrepreneurship, and the money doesn't necessarily start coming in overnight. So I really appreciate hearing how you've approached this with, again, it's and it's a staged approach, and it's a very, you're taking care of yourself in the process, and making sure you're not putting financial strain on yourself. So keep the money coming in from the corporate role, and then be very deliberate in how you're spending your time to then building your side hustle. But what you're finding is exactly what problem you're solving, and what the value of solving that problem is, and who it's for. And so, I'm hearing that you're setting yourself up for success. So, congratulations.
Well, thank you. I always, I have this kind of mantra that I say to myself, that's work hard, stay humble. And even in spite of, the successes that I've had with, Banner Medical, it's still just something that's really important to me, to just make sure that we're always doing the best job that we can, and that we're creating that content that people want to read, that they want to just be engaged in, and help them, do better as healthcare practitioners, and making your own choices for your own health on a daily basis. And I think you actually touched on a really important piece, and this is something I've talked publicly about before, but oftentimes when we're in that burnout phase, that is such a buzzword nowadays about just being unhappy and just miserable, for lack of better words. It's really important that you don't just jump off the cliff, so to speak, right? And oftentimes that's what I see happening, is that people are so miserable that they just are searching desperately for anything and everything that they could potentially do. And I think you really miss out on an important piece, which is, figure out how you can solve someone else's problem, and that's your business, right? You can't just, pick anything and hope that it works out. And I think that's really what's important when it comes to those calculated moves, and especially for successful entrepreneurs, and even, to a degree, women that are working in STEM, of, you can figure out something that you're amazing at. And if it solves somebody else's problem, then that's what you need to be doing.
And I think that is one of the unique attributes that a STEM education and STEM training actually does provide, because when you look at it in terms of what are the natural traits or things that have caused a young woman to pursue some kind of scientific or technical education, and there is a deep curiosity to understand how something works, or to how to make something better. So there is a productivity gene in there. I'm figuring this is what I'm kind of listening for as I speak with you, Brittany, is how your brain kind of works naturally, and the sort of strengths and values that you hold. and clearly, as you say, hard work, and I would say a very start with the end in mind as well, in terms of having that sense of calling or something in you that's wanting you to, to create value, to make something better than what it is right now. And it happens to be in the medical field. So tell me about, I guess, some of the biggest, what's the biggest challenge you've faced in life so far?
Wow, that's a tough question. I think, for me, it's funny because I've touched on this before, and I think it really just comes down to the perception of women in general. And I think for me, I've always been the type of woman that was not afraid to go after, what she wanted or verbalize those things. Really just comes from my grandmother. She broke the mold, I'd say, herself in the world, with being born in 1938, having polio, unfortunately having some functional disabilities that resulted from that. And then, just refusing to settle, and, telling her family or anyone, who, might have doubted her, because she grew up in a time where women were supposed to stay home and take care of the family, and which was fine. But for her, she would, she said, absolutely not. I'm going to go after my dreams and not settle. And so she was the first college educated woman in our family. And I think, to this day, when I think things are difficult or hard or a challenge, I always come back to her, and just that moment when I was 5 years old, and I noticed for the first time that she walked differently. And as 5-year-olds do, and being precocious as I said to her bluntly, Grandma, what's wrong with your leg? Like, why do you walk like that? And I just remember seeing on her face just, a glint of pain from the experience that she'd been through. But, she said to me, she looked at me straight in the face and said, oh, well, I had polio, and explained it to me. And I think just growing up with her and having that, role model to show you that you can accomplish your dreams, and you can work through those obstacles and those challenges, even in spite of people telling you otherwise or thinking differently of you because you're female, really has been meaningful for me. And I think I tend to have a very, I call it a very literal brain, where I just see the world differently. And my husband frequently teases me, because oftentimes the jokes, he's the jokester in the family, will go right over my head. But it's been I think one of the biggest struggles for me in terms of
Can you tell jokes? This is a really important question, Brittany. How? Because I get it, and I'm really bad at telling jokes. Like, I always forget the punchline, or I get it all mixed up the wrong way round. So how do you go at telling jokes?
Yeah, I'm the type of person that thinks the jokes like circles are pointless are hilarious, but my husband not so much. He's much better at that. But I think that was the biggest challenge, of just realizing that that was my asset, not my hindrance. And I think it took me, I'm 34, so it took me some time to really just feel okay with that and embrace that, and not feel like, I was just this weird, person existing in this world that, wasn't able to, I guess, relate in ways that are expected, to be that cheerleader, happy-go-lucky, female, that's expected, but just the one that was able to look at something and say, no, this content needs to be written this way, or we need to change this up, or this will be more engaging, to handle that.
So it sounds like you came into a lot of self-awareness and self-acceptance relatively early in life, like, as you say, in your 30s. And also there's a deep belief I'm hearing around, and again, coming through the role modeling of, your grandmother, but also, you have a sense of I don't want to say confidence, because it's deeper than that. It's, a sense of knowing, that comes through, Brittany, and you have a very deliberate, metered communication style in how you speak as well. And I think that's so, and of course that's going to translate into your writing as well. So in terms of, I guess, challenges, so the challenge generally of seeing that women are not, where it's not a level playing field for women career-wise. So what would be, but see, this isn't stopping you, and this is what has inspired me to have conversations with women like yourself who are, who are moving forward and carving a career that is fulfilling and transpiring into, being able to support them financially as well. So because you are doing it in spite of the norm of, there are those biases. There are a lot of, a lot of things in the system that make it harder for us to succeed or to take that seat at the table, if you will. So what would your advice be, I guess, coming from your own experience and what you see, that if someone is struggling to get ahead or struggling to move themselves forward, what would be your advice to them?
So I think that there's a couple important points that I would recommend to any woman out there that feels like they're struggling or they just need some extra help. The two crucial things that I think have helped me immensely are having great mentors and or sponsors in this world. And, I say sponsors as well because mentorship and oftentimes is very transactional. Whereas a sponsor is also invested in you. They go beyond just providing you feedback and information, where they'll actually say, you know what, I think, Brittany Hoffmann Eubanks does an amazing job and you should meet her, or you should hire her, or you should work with her, right? So, they're willing to put their reputation on the line as well, and to lift you up in a way to your next opportunity or your next career move. And I think that is instrumental. And oftentimes, I personally think as women, we don't tell individuals enough what it is that we want and what opportunities we're interested in, or, what we think we could make a difference in, or speak up. And that is so important. And unfortunately, men, not unfortunately, but in the context of women, men are just taught to do this so early on. As women, we frequently take the step back, right? We don't do this, and we don't have people teach us that it's okay. And actually, it's something that you need to do. If you want to, have those opportunities. And so that is crucial. The second piece is, I think we just need more representation. And so if there are opportunities for you to get involved and to work with other women that are doing amazing things, one of my favorite organizations that I'm a part of right now is called Pharmacist Women. It was started by one of my acquaintances and friend, Dr. Shara Reed. And it's just so important to have opportunities like that, to be able to communicate and interact and engage with other women that are doing it as well, to have that ability to learn from them. I always try to find the smartest person in the room and just learn every single thing I can from them, and has been immensely helpful for me. And just to be surrounded by other women that are doing great things, has been really helpful. And I think those two pieces in of themselves will really help take out some of that imposter syndrome, as well as make women feel more comfortable and confident to be able to go and do the things that they want to do and not feel like they have to, hold themselves back in a way.
That is so encouraging to hear, Brittany, because, together we can be so much bigger than, like, the whole is so much bigger than the sum of its parts. And there is so much more momentum that can be generated when a group of voices are all chiming together. And I think that's, you know, one of the beautiful things that have come out of COVID is when you see those choirs, the screens of people on the screen, all like singing in their lounge room, and yet together their voices as one is so compelling. And this is where, you know, it's the representation. It was a beautiful way you've expressed that, because often it's like, well, what does that actually mean? And this is one area where it can mean, you know, groups of like-minded women, or as you know, women in the same profession that are looking at how they can add value beyond the traditional career path. And I think that's creative. It's also fun. It's also, you know, creating a community that's adding value, as opposed to creating community simply for connection. You're doing connection, but then there's also a bigger agenda. So that's wonderful to hear. So in terms of what you need for yourself in addition to this to grow to the next level, what do you see? What gap do you see now? You seem to have that sixth sense for, okay, you know, you know, sensing a problem and then creating a solution, or applying your skills and talents in a way to solve that problem. So what's next for you?
So I am hyper focused on just scaling Banner and really just making it the go-to place for all, you know, medical information that's engaging, that people want to read. I feel very fortunate, and it wasn't something I ever planned when I first started my business, but to be able to hire on other pharmacists and create a, you know, revenue streams for them has been particularly meaningful for me. And so as an entrepreneur and business owner, I feel this in just magnitude of a calling to be able to help create an opportunity for them to work on, you know, work that's meaningful and that's fulfilling for them, and to make that not only for myself, but an opportunity available to them as well, to continue leveraging their backgrounds and to share their voice, because I feel like we just have a unique way and perspective on, you know, medicine outside of other healthcare providers, to really just bring it all together with the patient as the center. And ultimately, that's how healthcare should be. We should have, you know, various different healthcare practitioners that work together, but it should be patient-centered. And I use this analogy with my patients where, you know, we're on a boat, so to speak, and they're driving, they're the captain, and I'm that compass, just helping them navigate. You know, ultimately they get to make the decision on where they go, but I'm, you know, that compass helping them. And I think that's really kind of where we're going with Banner Medical as well, to help people get the information they need. I have so many ideas for improvements that we can make, just as it relates to putting out, you know, information, manuscripts that are meaningful, they're worth reading. There's actually a pretty amazing statistic out there that suggests that only about 1% of all the scientific content that's put out into the world is actually worth reading, that essentially the rest of it can go into the garbage. And
as in worth reading or not understood? So yeah.
And so I think that's just my mission in life, is to improve that and to, you know, just help information be digestible and to really solve a problem. And, you know, we see this, and actually I think COVID is a great example of this, you know, the process and how we have such fluid information that's being shared, that 1 minute we think hydroxychloroquine is the end all be all, the next minute it's not. And just that, you know, back and forth, you know, with information and how quickly things can change, but then also the process working too, right? So we've had retraction of papers that were found, you know, to not have data that was actually reputable, or we couldn't back up the science with it. And so I think that's the piece of it that's so important in medical communications, is to make sure that the information we're putting out into the world, especially with all the open access journals that are now available, and even predatory publishing to a degree, that fear of well, just that balance of being able to make information and knowledge available to everyone, but also retaining that quality piece as well, which is absolutely essential to be able to make informed decisions and to be able to take care of patients to the best of our ability and really to provide them the best outcomes. And I think that's also something that's near and dear to my heart as well, is just helping in that process to make the information available to everyone across the world. And not just having that exclusive access, or you need special privileges to, obtain this information. We're making some headway in that, with COVID, with a lot of the COVID resources being available for free. But just seeing that trend continue of how we disseminate information to everyone while still retaining, people's ability to have attribution or have credit for the work that they're doing.
Yeah, and this is where this is also the value of the STEM education and training, to be that credible voice, to be able to read the complex scientific data and then translate it into everyday English, so that even people where English is not the first language can not just understand it, but then take the suggested action, because of course compliance is one of the biggest issues with in general, and has been forever, hasn't it? People actually taking the recommended medications, because and again, I'm sure this is where, if we had a better understanding of why it matters and why it matters now, then we're going to be more more ready to take responsibility. So that, and as you say, COVID really has, it's put scientists in the spotlight, it's put them in the public spotlight, and and there is more and more focus on teaching scientists how to talk about their work in language that a 10-year-old could understand. Isn't that the the litmus test, that can a 10-year-old understand your project? Can a 10-year-old understand why this medication needs to be taken at this time? Or and again, integrating all the different facets, because it's not just about the drug, as you say, it's the whole integrated care approach, putting the patient front and center. And again, whether we like it or not, COVID is kind of showing us how important that is, isn't it? We need the whole community pulling together, and each individual doing the right thing.
Yeah, it's such an important point that you bring up too, because even beyond, adherence or compliance with patients, it even goes deeper to the level of the healthcare provider. We have so many guidelines out there and recommendations that in many cases, for one reason or another, and there's lots of different components that fit into the whys behind it, but just difficulty following or meeting guidelines, for patients. Heart failure is a great example of, just the number of individuals that leave a hospital after, being hospitalized, that aren't on guideline directed therapy for, heart failure. And I think that's really where companies like mine come into play, because, not everyone who's a brilliant researcher, or the individuals that are doing the work, love to write. In fact, when I first started this business, I can't tell you the number of times that I had individuals, when I was sharing what I do, say, "Oh my gosh, I hate writing," and so it just allows us to be able to help them have a voice to share the work that they're doing, and to really communicate that in a way that is understandable and that inspires change in clinical practice, because we know that, regardless of the healthcare system that you're involved in, whether it's in the United States, it's in Australia, it's in UK, wherever you are, you're busy. They're busy healthcare professionals. They have practices, they have patients they're taking care of. So they don't always necessarily have the time or the resources to be able to create that great content. And I think that's where, companies like mine come into play to help them create that and make that possible. But
so
still
when you say healthcare providers, then Brittany, would these be doctors themselves or hospitals, or who would be your primary client base? I'd
so
say
we
pharmaceutical companies or?
Yeah, so we have a mixture of clients that we serve, whether it's organizations that represent various health conditions, organizations for particular healthcare providers. For example, I do a lot with various pharmacy organizations, having been, being a pharmacist, which makes sense, but we really actually even go beyond pharmacy. So we help write for all healthcare providers. So whether it's a physician, a non-physician, clinician, pharmacist, really all healthcare providers are inclusive in the work that we do. And even with academics or scientists or researchers, helping them prepare their manuscripts. We really kind of have three main buckets, I feel like, that we serve. So that continuing medical education space, considered an expert in the educational grant area with needs assessments, as well as, I'd say, that editorial blogging area where we're really doing more patient, individual, general lay person facing information, as well as our scientific academic space where we focus on licensed test prep for individuals that are studying for their licensing exams, as well as that manuscript preparation, help with that. So kind of a mixture of areas that we serve, but really all with the same purpose of helping to improve outcomes. And actually I feel very fortunate because there's been so much interest in terms of, just pharmacists and medical writing in general as a non-traditional role, that recently I've also created a course specifically designed to help pharmacists do medical writing and to create that content to give back, in a way to those individuals.
So if people wanted to get in contact with you, Brittany, because we're coming to the end of our time today, where's the best place for pharmacists perhaps who are interested in learning more about medical writing, or other healthcare organisations to learn more about you? Where's the best place to connect with you?
I think the best place would be on LinkedIn. They can reach out to me personally. They can also follow Banner Medical LLC on LinkedIn as well. We share lots of content there. My personal page, Brittany Hoffmann Eubanks, is also a great place. I love meeting new pharmacists or anyone who's interested in medical writing, or just in general, if you're looking for discussions about how to navigate career as women in STEM, or just in general, I'd be happy to help out and engage in conversation.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation today, and there's so many gold nuggets around how you've approached different decision points in your life, how you're utilizing, how you're leveraging, how you're seeing opportunities, and also how you're approaching entrepreneurship. I think there is just so much more that we can learn from you, Brittany, and I really thank you for your time today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity, as well as I just want to say thank you for shining a light on just amazing women in STEM, and showing young girls and our young adult women that there are so many opportunities for them in the various STEM fields, and they can do anything that they put their mind to. And I think it's important that we, share these stories and change the conversation. There's more to, women that they believe in beyond beauty and fashion and the marketing things that we're shown on a daily basis. So I really, appreciate you saying that, but I just want to, thank you for all that you're doing in this area.
Thank you so much. Share stories and change the conversation. There's something that's a blog. That's a blog, Brittany. Thank you so much.
Thank you.